Hey guys, Chris here, and I want to do a video on enmeshment today. And I've done some videos on this in the past. I want to focus particularly today on an interesting part of the topic for more for guys, and the topic of womanizing, and also just as well about relationships with women and finding out what's going on there. So for those of you who don't know what enmeshment is basically where the boundaries aren't clear between you and a parent, let's just say the guy and his mum in this particular case. And there's stuff going on in the background, like there's lots of maybe guilt there about how they should live their life. There's not a true sense of self, like the guy is not fully individuated, doesn't really know who he is, his full self, integrity, his sort of masculine template. And this topic of enmeshment can be applied to loads of different areas as well. It could be to do with finances, money, and purpose. And you would look at this topic in general as well, and you would say, well, there are lots of people out there who don't know, maybe what they want to do in their life. They're or not too confident in themselves. There's lots of anxiety going on. There's lots of addictions, and I want to talk about addiction as well, and that fits into the topic of womanizing if it's coming from that perspective. People are free to do whatever they choose to do. Some people like to date, and but we're talking in a more of a toxic way of what's actually happening there. So with the diagram I want to bring your attention to, which I'll just sort of show here. So in the diagram you can see that the true self is hidden. The false self is what's been created there to meet the needs of the parent. You could be, people pleaser, all this stuff which is not actually you. It's literally something you've had to be, and then that happens in that relationship. So in the topic of the womanizer, it sort of allows you to be in control, because if you're in a relationship, that false self will start to come out, and that part of you that's probably running away from that relationship and your parent is why you essentially will end up running away from the relationship in your life. So looking at this diagram, it is what's going on in the background underneath. And I've talked about in the videos in the past about like money issues, or you want a parent to buy you something, and you're always relying on them. It keeps you in that kind of child dynamic, and what you want to do is create that complete separation, so you find out who you really are. And this is a big quest that I've actually been on to for a long time now, and you're just really finding out who you really are, what you really want in life. And it can be a difficult process, because you're like, well, I don't actually know who I am. And the whole topic of the comfort zone is what, your false self is to stay in a comfort zone, because a parent would want for you not to be in danger, not to be this, to be that. And then you stay to that, and where you want to push into is that true individual self. And as I said, this topic was more about the womanizing concept, understanding what's happening, because I've always found it interesting. I've on this journey, particularly in the beginning, I was around a lot of guys who would just keep going from woman to woman, and there was never any sort of relationship there or real strong connection. And I was always curious to know what was actually going on. And also I experimented, I lived my life that way as well. I wouldn't say that happens per se anymore, but particularly back in the day, I remember it would be just relationship to relationship, and the second things would start to get a bit serious, I would immediately want to get away, because it would just feel quite trapped. And again, that's the original relationship that, for example, a guy would have with his mum, and then that exactly starts playing, but it's not necessarily how it is actually going to play out, but you feel like it is, and that's what that means to you. And it's because deeper down there is something still there with your primary caregiver from a child. So what the addictive process does is that's actually going on in the background, but then the guy is going, say from woman to woman, and always being in control, always being in control of the relationship and how they want it in particular. And then the satisfaction in the beginning, the charm, the sweeping someone off their feet, it becomes addictive. But then the second it gets serious, you kind of want to break it. And then essentially, if you look at that is addiction. And what I'm researching a lot and learning a lot about at the moment is there is never any freedom in addiction. We think there's freedom in addiction. You know, you could just binge on eating junk food and just keep eating sugar and caffeine and pornography. And when you go into these things in the moment, they feel rewarding. And what I've learned a lot from Alan Carr in his books is he's just saying it's all, you know, it's not real. It's you think you need that thing. It could be, say, you're addicted to caffeine, and then you go 2 days without it, and then you've got headaches and you feel terrible, and then you have it again and you feel great because you're addicted to it. So the womanizing process, the sex addiction process is an addiction. But what it doesn't get you to is it doesn't get you to the true connection with someone, bonding with someone, you know, what your spirit or your soul wants. So it's important to understand that and what's actually going on there. So I found this very interesting. I mean, that diagram is true, you know, so it really resonates with me. And what's important, I think, is to really get to finding out our true self. And, you know, you don't have to necessarily apply this to relationships. It could be to do with your purpose. It could be to do with money. It could be to do with this or that. And sometimes, like with career, it's about, oh, well, what does my parent want for me? What kind of, do they want me just to fit into society, blah, blah, blah. So you can't actually tap into your true essence. So the process of individuation is a tough one, because you have to fully separate and you don't really know who you are, and then you probably need different role models, but you are starting to put together your own template of who you really are. And I think that's an important process. So looking at that, really look to see what's actually going on in the background, underneath how this enmeshment relates, making sure there's clear boundaries with the parent. And it might be that in real life, talking to them or on the phone to them, it is good, but there is still stuff going on in the background. And there are little things now and there. And I think we always become aware of different things the further along the line, but look to really have your own life and also, create that life that you really do want. Because if you're not, then you are still falling back into those patterns as a child, right? You know, because to fully separate is to be fully independent and to live life as you want it, without the anxiety, without the stress. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.